This is the process shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and I've seen Quasi, a new medieval comedy from Kevin Heffernan. Comedy might be an overstatement, though. It's a twisted adaptation of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, placing him in the role of a torturer living with his friend Duchamp, living the best life that he can despite his physical deformity. Meanwhile, a Cold War has begun between the King of France and the Pope, leading to the most obvious conclusion that one of them needs to be assassinated. When Quasi is chosen by lottery to have an audience with the Pope, the King orders him to kill him during a confession, only for the tables to be turned when the Pope demands the King's death. This sudden conflict of interests, both of which will inevitably lead to Quasi's own demise, puts him in a place which, through a comical series of antics, may very well lead to freedom for all of France. At least, that's supposed to be what happens here. I want to be generous and say that this story could work if it didn't try to add so many other ongoing elements to all these events, but I don't think that would have helped in any way. Admittedly, it does follow its narrative formula pretty well, with subplots that do tie into the main storyline without wasting its time, nor are there really any scenes where a whole lot of nothing occurs. Pretty much everything has something to offer, and that's entirely what you would want in a story. The problem is that this movie takes the easy way out and goes for a simpler sense of writing and development. Of course, comedies don't need to be too deep or intricate to get the point across, but it gets worse here because of how unfunny everything is. When I say simple, I mean that almost everything we see is pretty much on the cutting edge of third-grade humor. Not so much foregoing anything character or story-driven, but defaulting to crude or basic jokes or gags with even less care for any other logic in character personalities. It's pretty much dependent on who needs to take up what role for a scene, and what they need to say to keep things moving along. These downsides are made even worse by the acting, which further plays into the simplicity of everything by more or less being just as basic in creative effort. The main cast are either not putting in any effort at all, or putting all their energy into making a funny voice. In some cases, the voice is pretty much the only thing that defines a character here. Anyways, the technical production of the movie is another aspect that I find to be unhelpful. Every scene is pretty clearly shot on some set piece, and not only that, but they're framed from the same handful of angles as well. It makes for a very stale-looking movie, despite the amount of detail put into set design. They may look relatively believable, but the movie as a whole looks like something out of the mid to late 2000s, and even then it probably would have been stuck on television anyways. Other creative choices are bland and uninteresting, from color design to the editing and music. Ultimately, it's all stapled together pretty lazily, probably because they assume that the comedy in the writing and acting would carry everything. It takes less than a minute to realize that's not going to be the case, and everything after that is pretty much an exercise in tolerance. Quasi, Kevin Heffernan, 2023. Half a star. I do not recommend watching this movie at all. That's it for this review. If you liked it, leave a like. If you have something to add, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Honestly, I might have given it a higher score just because it had a competent story framework, but I'm not going to be that forgiving.